is a dream, time like a stream, carries our burdens away. Never despair, joys everywhere, love can befriend you today. Free from all cares, like birds on the air, soar above griefs and worries, seek joy and be gay. Often on earth, things of great worth, worldly ambitions divine. Sometimes a friend helps us ascend up from life's cares to the sky. Love is a star to shine in the fire. It can guide us and help us toward light to draw nigh. Love is a star to shine in the fire. It can guide us and help us toward light to draw nigh.
Thank you, Sergio. And I also thank all of you who did brave the weather to come today. It's not easy when it's raining. Sometimes the streets are flooded like they are. Before I begin, I would also like to welcome a special guest we have here today, Mr. Sri V.R. Karthikeyan, who is a very great friend of Swamiji's. And it's a pleasure to have him here today because having his presence here reminds me so much of Swamiji. Because he was a great friend, he would often be asked by Swamiji to introduce him at the various discourses that he would give. And as we were speaking this morning, just before the discourse, I mentioned to him that my initial meeting with Swami Kriyananda in 1968 actually didn't take place at a face-to-face meeting. My first introduction to Swamiji was through his voice. Many of the songs that you've been hearing before the discourse or before the program officially began were songs of Swamiji's. Many of them were instrumental, but also some of them were vocals as well, and you may have had a chance also to hear his voice. And I first was introduced to Swamiji very accidentally. Now, if there are such things as accidents in life, but in a sense my path crossed his by hearing his voice on the radio. I was a college student at that time, or at least recently graduated from the university. And I heard his voice in the morning on a radio program that he had recorded. And he had a series of short discourses that would play on Sunday mornings. And upon hearing his voice, I was in another room and I stopped. I said, "Who is that?" And I went into the other room and I did not even hear exactly what he was saying because I was busy with other things. But I had heard the voice and I went into the other room and I said, "Who is that?" And as I began to listen, he made mention that he was a disciple of Ananda, and I was attracted to it immediately. There was something about the voice that was magnetic. There was something about the voice that was attractive. There was something about the voice that made me want to find out more about him. And so when he said that he was a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda, well, naturally I had read the autobiography, and of course I had found that too attractive immediately. Upon reading that, I wanted to know more as well, but I didn't know how to be able to follow up. But here two events, you might say, came together. And Swami Kriyananda had later said that he too, when he read the autobiography of a yogi, he mentioned how much he enjoyed it, and how much he too felt it to be very attractive and very magnetic. And Yogananda said to Swamiji, "Well, that's because I put my vibrations into that book. I put my vibrations into it. And it was the same thing that Swamiji did when he sang. He put his vibrations into what he was singing. Now, I would take that a step further in my association with him for many years. He put his vibrations into everything he was doing. Whether it was the smallest thing, seemingly haphazard, seemingly inconsequential, he put his vibrations into it. In other words, he did whatever he did in life intentionally. It wasn't casual. And this is exactly what he had advised all of us to do, to put our vibrations into what we're doing. And why might we do that? Because it makes it magnetic. And if something is magnetic, what does that mean? It's attractive. It attracts to us. Now, each person here, each one of us, has a very unique magnetism. But all of us are trying, in whatever way possible, to attract something to us. Some people attract more noble ambitions, you might say, than others, but yet we all want something. We want happiness, we want fulfillment, we want satisfaction in life. You can translate those into particulars. We want friends, we want a good family, we want a nice job, we want prosperity, we want abundance in our life, in whatever fashion that might take, in many, many different ways. Now, yesterday, when I was thinking about this class today, this discourse today, I went out to the internet. Now, the internet is a fascinating thing. It's actually, I love the internet, but of course it has its negative side too. But one of the reasons I like it is because any trivial question I might have, I think, where did apricots come from? Or what's the capital of Manitoba? Or where, something totally perhaps inconsequential. I said, I'll go on the internet and Google will tell me. And so I had a question yesterday in my mind that I knew I would find it in the books, but I thought, let me just ask Google and see what it says. And I wanted to know what Yogananda, he had said something about the topic of prosperity. And I, rather than looking it up in the books, I thought, well, let me just look on the internet and I'll type in Yogananda prosperity and see what comes up. And the reason, of course, I put that word in there is because the topic of today's discourse is magnetism, how to attract what we need and when we need it. It's a very useful topic. It's a practical topic, because isn't this something all of us want? We want to attract, just as I said, whatever it might be. And so I put in that word prosperity in Yogananda. And one of the top listings that came up, I said, well, that looks good, and I checked on it, clicked on it, and I came across a gentleman, an Indian gentleman who wrote an article which was exactly not what I wanted to read. It was because he was actually very negative. He was negative, and his point of view was that Paramahansa Yogananda obviously could not have been a great saint, as is commonly thought, because he talked about how each of us can go out and be prosperous in life, how we can attract to ourselves those things that are of the material world that are going to uplift us. He taught us how to make money successfully. Obviously, therefore, because he talked about prosperity in material terms, he could not be a great saint. And of course, I read that, and my hackles went up, you might say. And I was thinking, what a silly thing to be saying. And I began thinking about that, and I thought, and it stimulated me, which is perhaps good, because I was about to give this class. And so it stimulated me to speak a little bit to that, because it is a common misunderstanding. And of course, if he really understood Yogananda's teachings a little bit deeper, he would have been totally aghast at what Yogananda also said. he would have considered it blasphemous. Yogananda said the art of making money is second only to the art of realizing God. Now, that really must have disturbed him. Now, why is that? Why was that? What did Yogananda mean? Now, why, when he spoke about money? Well, you have to remember a couple of reasons that Yogananda spoke it in those terms. That he was speaking in the 1930s at a time of great economic depression. People were discouraged. People were out of work. People were having difficult time in their job. And they didn't understand that and he was trying to help people, to build people's spirits, to raise people's energy up. People were becoming discouraged and passive. And he would say, if you need a job, if I needed a job, I would shake the world until God gave me what I needed. And this was the attitude that he took. And this was the attitude he was trying to imbibe in people to approach God as your Heavenly Father. And what your Father has belongs to you as the child of God. And that you need not, and you must not, approach the divine as a beggar. Ask for what is divinely yours. But yet, you must put out the energy. You must put out the work to be able to attract that to yourself. And what is money? Money is energy. And so if you turn that saying and look at it in that fashion, the art of raising energy, the art of stimulating within yourself energy, is second only to that of the art of realizing God, because it takes energy to accomplish anything in life. And the ability to not be able to have that energy in your life, how can one possibly find God, which takes a great deal of energy, takes a great deal of willpower, of summoning up oneself, to open oneself, to give oneself, to open one's heart to be able to receive God's grace. If one doesn't have summon up within themselves the ability to do that, in the material, mundane world, how can one possibly think of finding God unless one is able to be successful in the mundane things of this world? Many people think that there is some sort of a chasm that's worldly. The material world is worldly. And this man had obviously that approach. There's the worldly world, and if you're going to be spiritual, you must renounce that worldly world, material world. But I would say that man did not even understand his own spiritual heritage. That is not the teaching of the Vedas. The Vedas do not reject this world. The Vedas teach to have an integrated approach to life. All of life is divine. We must harmonize and bring out the godly aspects of all aspects of our lives in order to be truly fulfilled in this life. And the Vedas, you read the Vedas, and you find there, the Vedas teach us how to be successful. Spiritually, yes. But they teach us how to be successful in daily life. If you want to, if you want to be successful, you want to increase your herd, you want to, whatever it might be able to do, outward type of thing to do. There are various mechanisms for that, even mantras for that, incantations, ways, spiritual means. And what Swamiji explained, he says, it's better. He says, it's better that we able to fulfill all of our earthly needs that we're put here to fulfill them through spiritual means. And if you can fulfill your needs through spiritual means, in time you will come to understand that you can fulfill all your needs. Even you realize when the spiritual needs are no longer attractive, or the material needs are no longer attractive to you, you will have the tools to be able to fulfill those needs and those desires that you really want in your life. That's why we should balance all aspects of our life. And there's not a dichotomy. This is all of God's world. It's said money is the root of all evil. The full statement is the love of money is the root of all evil. Money is just energy. But to think, and this is Master Yogananda went on to say when he made that statement about the art of making money, he said, yet we must not believe, or we must not allow ourselves to fall into the delusion that the making of money is going to make us happy. It will not. It will not. But to make money for good causes, to make money for serving your neighbor, to make money for helping the poor, to make money to share with others, to create energy to make this world a better place, he says this is fine. This is something we should do. And it is good for a person, most people at least, to do such things because it raises your energy. And once you have accomplished those things, you can put them aside and find what you really need in life, which is God realization. But you must start. He said, just as an example, he says, if you want to win the love of God, how can you possibly win the love of God if you can't first win the love of your neighbors? If you can't first win the hearts of other people, how are you going to win God to yourself? If you can't summon the energy in the same way to take care of your own basic needs, how can you possibly raise your energy enough to be able to accomplish the greatest task that all of us face, the upliftment of ourselves into God realization? We must start where we are and then raise ourselves up from that point where we are now into something higher. And little by little by little, we wean ourselves of those lower things until ultimately only God remains and only our desire for God remains. Now, what is prosperity? What is abundance? It's being satisfied. You could say it's being able to attract those things that are our own highest good, but it's also being satisfied with that which will provide us with our own highest good. You notice some people that no matter how much material things that they earn in life or get in life, they always want, 10% more. I think that's surveys have shown that if you ask people, how much if you were to make a little bit more, are you satisfied with what you have in life? They would say, well, yes, I'm satisfied, but not quite. How much more would it take to make you satisfied? Well, about 10%. And so it is. It's always that. It doesn't matter what the base is. It's 10%. Person could be living in the village. Well, if I just had my crop 10% more, I would be doing well. And the person down in Mumbai, in one of those high-rises there, they need it too. It's a very relative thing. But the man who can be satisfied with whatever he has, he is the one I would consider truly rich. Now, what does it take? Now, you find that some people, isn't it true? You just like Swami Kriyananda, I was attracted to him because I felt this man has something. He's rich in something that I want. It was that vibration. And he lived a very simple life, actually. But yet, if he needed something, it would come to him. He had that ability to attract whatever that would be needed, and he used it to be able to serve other people, to spread his guru's work. That was the only thing that he had as a goal in life. He didn't care for himself. But when it came to his guru's work, he was dedicated. He was one-pointed. He would put all of his energy into it. And I wanted that as well. Well, I learned a very good lesson before I met Swamiji. As I mentioned last week, I was a student at the University of California and in Berkeley. And I went to college for 4 years. And in my very first year, my freshman year, I met another young student, as we often do, those of us who go to school. You make your friends very quickly and stick with them sometimes. And I met this fellow as I was a fresher in school, And in subsequent years, we became roommates. And we were, through college, we were on and off, we were roommates through school. And I had come to college from a modest, very modest background. My brother and I were the first of our family ever, generational, to go to college. We were the first. So my father and mother were very proud of us, but we were the first. So I came from that background of a not an upper class background by any means. And but my friend had come from a rather prosperous background, and so I saw him, and the one thing I noticed is my friend was very, very generous with everything that he had. He was generous. He would share everything that he had. And I thought, well, he shares, and yes, he's coming from a prosperous background. He has the means to share. And so certainly, and I was not quite like him. But as I came to be his roommate and got to know him better and I met his family, I discovered something. His father had worked very hard and was well off and paid his son's college bills. In other words, his tuition and his books. But he gave him a pittance of spending money. He had no money. My friend turned out. He had a good background, but my friend's father believed that giving too much to his children was bad for them. So he gave them almost nothing. And he was up to him to make his way beyond the basic necessities. So I found, but yet I discovered something. This friend of mine, good friend, he continued. Anything he had, he shared. And it didn't matter with everybody. If you were a friend, he shared it all. And even if he had nothing. Now, when I first met him, I came to think, well, he shares because he has much. So of course he shares. But by the time I graduated from college, I began to see that he was generous. And because he was generous, things came to him. And it was so. In his day-to-day life, when he needed something, somehow something always worked for him. It would come. Money would come at the right time. Fortune would come, shine upon him. Nice friend to have, of course. But fortune would shine upon him. Friends, he attracted friends. But I found that that happened in his life because he was generous. It was that way around. Generosity made those things happen. And through my association with him over those 4 years of college, I changed my whole attitude. I said, I want to be like him. Because I see what's happening. I want to be generous. Rather than my little bit more narrow way of looking at life. And I've tried since then. But it was a good point that we have to start with the attitude. The attitudes that we have, the personalities that we have, the way that we approach life influences the circumstances of each of our lives. But our common way of thinking is my circumstances determine the attitude I'm going to take toward life. But it's absolutely the wrong way to approach it. Now, some people will say, well, obviously my friend had good karma. And that is true. He did have good karma. But where did that karma come from? Who created that karma? He created it, maybe in a past life, but nevertheless he was responsible for creating that karma. And so if we want that karma, we are the ones who create it. And it comes from the attitudes and from the way that we approach life. Now, I read a very interesting scientific study some years ago that had a great influence on my approach to this subject. There was a psychological study that was done by a series of psychiatrists who were studying a symptom of multiple personality syndrome that some people have. You've heard of these people, I suspect, that they have a dual personality. And in if given a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of situation in their life, well, they'll flip from one to the other. And it's a rare syndrome, but apparently it actually is, it's been documented to be true. And one personality perhaps will not even be aware of the other personality, but they will flip between these two. Well, they had a series of patients who they studied in this regard, and this is what I found is interesting. Let's take this one patient, and we'll call, he had two personalities. He had personality A, and he had personality B. And the interviewers, the psychologists, would interview him when he was in personality A. And they discovered something. Well, he had a distinct personality, but they discovered something physiological also. When he was in personality A, he would wear glasses, spectacles, and his eyesight was poor. He also, when he was in personality A, he had developed a mole on his face. Interesting. When he would flip to personality B, his whole demeanor would change. Personality would change, but his physical demeanor would change as well. He would have perfect eyesight. And they tested. He would have perfect eyesight. The mole on his face would disappear. Now think about that. How is that possible? His very personality, the attitude, the approach that he took to life, those very qualities that were part and parcel of him, determined how his physical body outwardly expressed itself. And consequently, if the physical body takes on a different outward expression, think about the larger implications beyond the physical. There's that vibration, you could say, put your vibration into it. He was putting out a completely different vibration of magnetism that was attracting circumstances to it. And you found this just in the classical story of Mr. Jekyll and Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or the other way around. The classical different circumstances entirely. And so it is with us as well. Depending upon our own inner being, we emanate a certain vibration that attracts circumstances and the karmic patterns that each of us have in life. Yes, those karmic patterns go from lifetime to lifetime. They transcend. So it may have been in past lifetimes, but yet we're reaping the fruits of that in this lifetime. And so what this raises is the possibility that if I can change that, or how, the question may be, how do I change that? But if I change the circumstances in some way, just outwardly, that's not necessarily going to change me inwardly. But if I can change inwardly in some fashion, I can change that attitude, that approach from inside. And all of a sudden my magnetism begins to take on a different quality and begin to attract to me that which I need, and also perhaps that which I want as well. Now this is a whole different subject of what's the difference between what I want and what I need. And that's, of course, I think you know how that might go. But nevertheless, the potential is there inwardly to make that change. Now just a very simple thing. You can change yourself. Now our workshop today is going to share some practical tips for this. And Sergio's going to be coming up after to share some. But I'd like to just suggest one thing immediately. This is seemingly very mundane, but very important. I learned many things from Swami Kriyananda, many, many things. But it wasn't so much the lectures that he gave. Yes, of course, I did learn from that as well. Perhaps from the lectures was more what I learned is how to intellectually express what I learned through just the mere association with him, because I wanted to become like him. So what if I want to be like him? Well, I'll just sort of mimic, you might say. I'll put myself in that aura and try to express in a similar way. And one of the very first lessons he gave me was this. I had known him, perhaps it was 6 months by this time. I had known him, and he had purchased a piece of property in the mountains in California, where he wanted to begin a meditation retreat in a hermitage place for himself. And he had invited me to go there, because I had graduated from school and had not yet entered that career track or marriage track even. And I was just a single fellow and not yet knowing what to do in life. And he said, well, since you're free, you might say, for a moment, would you be willing to help me with some project? And I said, well, that sounds good. I will. So I went. I went up there and to just do physical odd jobs. And well, he stayed in San Francisco, where he had his flat. But he would come on the weekend. And so I had just moved there, and he came up on a weekend, a Friday, a Saturday, and I didn't know he was there. And I was walking on the pathway, and all of a sudden, somebody comes up behind me, and they put their arm from around the back, like this. He was behind me, puts his arm around my chest, and puts his hand in the small of my back, and pulls me like that, and he says, "Stand up straight. You're not going to amount to anything unless you learn to stand up straight." And this, how many people have done that to you? And nobody had ever done that with me before. And then I saw, and I could tell right away who it was. It was Swami. He said, "Stand up." And I realized that what I was doing is I was kind of like this, you see. Now, if I was up here talking to you like this, would that be magnetic? No, it wouldn't be magnetic. So he said, "Stand up straight." And I watched Swamiji, and this is how Swamiji led with his chest. If he was to walk and bump into a wall, it would have been his chest first. That was the first thing. His posture was like that, and he maintained that posture. And this is what he demanded of me, and not only me. He demanded this of everyone, and he reminded people, "Sit up straight." See a couple people shuffle here, but he was telling me something more than about my physical posture. He was telling me to have the right posture. Now think about this word posture. Physical, yes, because if we don't have a straight spine, Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, a bent spine is the enemy of self-realization. Because if your spine is bent, the energy in the spine does not move properly. It becomes blocked. And remember, what are we? We're people beings that are electrical of nature. We have the flow of current. If you study yoga, you'll understand there's flows of current in the spine. And wherever you have a physical flow of current, what do you have around it? You studied this in school. You have a flow of current, you have an electrical field around that flow. If you have a strong flow, you have a stronger electrical field. And what is an electrical field, the property of it? It's magnetic, electromagnetism, and it has the ability to attract or to repel. A strong flow, a stronger magnetic field. So Swami was magnetic. We want to be magnetic. And the very first thing is to stand up straight. Now, there's more to it than that, though. Our posture to life. What posture do we take toward life when we stand up straight and lead with our chest? We're there to engage the world. Come on, world. Bring it to me. I'm here. I welcome you. My heart is open to receive what the world has to offer. That which comes, as Swami would say, of its own accord, let it come. And deal with it. Don't be passive. Because that's not a passive posture, is it? It's a posture of welcoming whatever comes to you in life. And it's a posture of not only welcoming, but saying, I embrace it. And you take that posture and you have that attitude toward life, and nothing is beyond your ability to deal with it. It just is a matter of how much willpower and energy and enthusiasm we can bring to bear on whatever it is that comes to us in life. So welcome it. Don't run from it. Welcome it. And we put out the vibration of embracing life, and we find that we're given the power that comes to us. We are children of God. This is God's world coming to us. And God, as the Heavenly Father, will provide for our needs if we open ourselves and welcome and embrace God within us. This is the principle of divine prosperity. And nothing is separate. The spiritual, the energetic, the physical, they are all different rates of consciousness. And to be able to be successful on one implies the ability to be successful on the other. It's merely a rate of vibration. And this is the approach that we want to take. And this is the approach that will lead to true abundance and true prosperity. And then, of course, learning that lesson of what is it in life that we really need versus what we want, and being able to tell the difference between those two. Those things that are there in life for our own highest good, these are the things that we want abundance of. And what is that? Obviously, it's the basic material needs that all of us need in life to be able to survive. But what do we want beyond that? We want friends. We want happiness. We want health. We want to be able to be successful. And it's very important that we are successful in life. It's something that we want on a soul level. And I mean success, not just in monetary terms here. We want to be successful as human beings, because this is what our soul wants. Our soul wants that success and is not satisfied until it achieves it. I've noticed something in my life that I think you will perhaps notice in yours as well, that I'm not satisfied until I'm successful at something. I have a hard time putting it down until I get it right. Now, some of you may be like me. You have on your computer screen, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, some recent discourse we were talking about this. I have on my computer screen a little puzzle. In idle moments, I do this puzzle. And it has levels of proficiency. Easy, not so easy, and on up different levels. And so it's a simple thing. It doesn't take more than a few minutes. And I try it, and it beats me. Try it again. And I notice I keep coming back to it until I can beat it. And then once I beat it, then I go on. And isn't it so? I mean, there's lots of things like that. Maybe I'm a competitive type. I don't know. But I find that life is like that also. We're given a challenge in life, and we don't do so good. And lots of people, when they fail at something, or you could say, Swami would never say fail. He says, we have not yet succeeded. And he says, when we have yet to succeed at something, some people give up. But there's something within each one of us when we take on a challenge in life, we're not going to be satisfied until we have reached the point where we can be successful at it. Something will draw us back again and again and again. And sometimes these things can be lifetimes again and again, drawing us back until we succeed. And we want success. And because the real success is not just on this material plane, the real success that's calling us is spiritual success. That's behind everything. We want to spiritually succeed and find our true home, which is in the divine. I'd like to share a few suggestions of how we can apply these to our life. Now, I mean these on all levels, not just the spiritual or not just the material, but on all, because they apply to all. We need to be successful on all different levels. Now, one of the first principles I mentioned is that we are beings of magnetism. And just as last week we were talking about the subject of karma, and we talked about how karma applies on the philosophical realm, but really it's just an expression also of what applies on the physical realm of action, reaction. For every action there's an opposite reaction. This is just Newton's physics as well. The same applies with magnetism as well. It applies on the spiritual realm, but as I mentioned also, it applies on the spiritual realm as well as the physical realm. Magnetism is that which attracts. And when we look within ourselves and asking ourselves, what is it that attracts? We have to look within ourselves as what are those things that make us attractive. Now the first thing is, of course, is energy. I mentioned our posture, being able to stimulate the flow of life force within us. Those people that have vitality, the physical sort, they tend to be, there's a magnetism to them. Now remember, magnetism can be positive and it can also be negative as well. But so you find in life, you find some people are very positively magnetic. The great saints are all magnetic. You also find there have been characters in history who have been negative as well. They too have magnetism, but of the negative kind. But the one common theme amongst all people of magnetism is they have energy. They have vitality. A lazy person is not going to be magnetic. So a person who has the physical side of it has an asset there. But it's more than physical, because we know that there are people, perhaps they have a body that doesn't work very well, but yet they too, in spirit, they're magnetic. In spirit, they're vital. In spirit, they're energetic. Their minds are energetic, and they're working with a great deal of enthusiasm. So those things that create that enthusiasm, that sense of energy, that's the beginning point of that energy, of that magnet that creates, as energy in motion creates that magnetic force. Now, how you apply that, though, is going to determine what comes back to you. So you look at a man of success in business, they're going to be able to attract. They attract business success if they apply that energy. Another one puts their energy in a spiritual realm. They begin to attract that. Now, it's an interesting fact in the life of Paramahansa Yogananda that he had many great disciples. And it was interesting that many of his highest disciples were, prior to taking up the spiritual path, or even simultaneous at first, taking up the spiritual path, were businessmen. Now, isn't that interesting? That fellow who wrote that article I read yesterday would be aghast. They were businessmen. Why? Because business requires a certain amount of skill. If we can learn to turn that skill into a direction that also brings a spiritual fulfillment, that's even better. And but yet it lays the foundation for that. And if you look at a successful businessman, or a successful sportsman, perhaps, what also do they have? They have the ability to concentrate as well. They're able to put their minds one thing at a time to be able to accomplish what they want. They're not scattered, in other words. I read a wonderful story that I often heard about Napoleon, great general Napoleon. Very focused, very magnetic, apparently. They say that he was attractive. And it is said also that he would pick his generals. When he would pick the generals for his army, one of the first qualities that he would look for in a general is he lucky? He would ask that question. Is he lucky? Now, is luck merely fate? Is coincidence? No. Luck is magnetic as well, because there's something within that person that seems to make them lucky. And so this is a quality that Napoleon would look for. I think he subtly understood these principles. But yet there's a story that Napoleon was on one of the battles that he was fighting, and he was at his headquarters, and he was writing an order that the courier was waiting to take it, and he was writing in ink an order for his general what to do, next maneuver to do in this battle that was raging. He wrote, and just as he finished writing the order, a cannonball landed right next to him. Cannonball, boom, landed next to him and sent up a huge spray of sand. Napoleon merely looked at it and held out his order so that the sand would fall upon the order and dry the ink. Shook the sand off, folded it, and gave it to his courier. Didn't even blink. He was so concentrated. And of course he was so one-pointedly focused. And this is how we have to be. If we're wanting to be successful in life, we have to concentrate like a laser beam upon one thing at a time. Now, in the modern world, I ride the metro. Some of you ride the metro? Yeah, you ride the metro? Talk, talk, talk. Talk, 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 talk. Maybe two of them. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, except it's actually good because it makes me gives me a story. But the idea behind it is multitasking, right? I'm going to do, if I can do one thing at a time well, wouldn't it be better if I do two things at a time well, or three things at a time well, or four things at a time well? At a certain point, there's a degradation of our concentration as we do that. The idea that more is better, in some senses, is not good for us. I actually read an article in on the internet, by the way. I read an article about memory, that when it's been discovered that when you're trying to do remember more than one thing at a time, trying to hold in your memory more than one thing at a time, there's a thing called memory competition, and both degrade. But if you focus on one memory at a time, finish it, go to the next memory at a time, you're able to recall both of them much better. But when you hold them, many of them simultaneously, and try to remember simultaneously at a time, they all degrade. Now, it's something that I think science demonstrates, which is a basic principle. If we're going to focus and if we're going to attract what we want and what we need in life, we're going to have energy, and we're going to be able to have to concentrate that energy and then direct it towards what our true needs really are in life. Now, one of the greatest obstacles that people have to being able to summon up what they really need in life, I'm focused, I'm energetic, but I don't seem to receive what I'm really needing in life. Often it's the principle of being able to remove those things that are within us that are inhibiting our ability to receive what we really need in life. Swami Kriyananda said, within each one of us are two principles that are at war with each other. One of them is the yes-saying principle, and the other is the no-saying principle. And this, in terms of prosperity and in terms of abundance, can be summarized in this way. Do we have in our consciousness, in our attitudes, an attitude of prosperity and abundance, or do we have in our attitudes an attitude of lack and of being needy? If you think of yourself as abundant consciousness, you're going to find the universe will begin to respond to you. If you think of yourself as needy, as lacking, as poor, poverty consciousness, you'll find that that which you have will begin to dissipate as well. And most people, if I would say that to you, say, well, I don't have a poverty consciousness. But I'd say, is that true? Whenever you have desires for something, oh, I wish I had that new car. Oh, I wish I had that. What are you affirming in yourself? You're affirming that you don't have it. You're affirming that you're unhappy unless you did have it. You're affirming a sense of lack, you see, that I lack it. If only this, if only that, if only the other thing. And all of those are saying how poor I am now, but how I would be much better off if I had something else. And this is at the basis of, you know that in the Raja Yoga we teach in the yamas, niyamas, you know these. One of them is not to covet something. If you covet that which is not rightfully yours, it's called stealing, you see. But it's not literally stealing, that too, but it's not literally stealing, but it's looking at your neighbor and wishing something that you had something your neighbor had. It's not yours. What that is, and why is that wrong? It's because what we're doing is we're affirming a sense of lack. And as we study those yamas, ancient teachings, each one of them has a power that if we can learn to protect, if we can perfect that quality of yama, in this case, let's say non-stealing, non-coveting, a certain power comes, a certain siddhi comes when we perfect that. And the one that comes from not coveting is that everything you need will come to you on its own. Isn't that beautiful? When you no longer have an inner need, and no longer are tentacles of desire going out. I'll be happy if you find that naturally life will supply you that which you need. And this is the basic principle of supply in this physical world. If we realize that we have already, that we are the children of the divine, and prosperity is ours. Now it sounds very simple, but it's true. It's true that if we feel ourselves in attunement with that divine abundance, God will provide for us. But we have to act. Paramahansa Yogananda said, I will reason, I will, and I will act. But guide thou my reason, will, and activity to the highest in everything that I do. So overcome whatever in your mind, that idea that you lack, and focus your energy on positive things in the consciousness that they are part of God's plan of abundance for you. Now, this requires, though, that which you want to acquire is for your highest good, and that is in tune with the divine will. Now we know that there are many people that seek things in life that are not in tune with the divine will. You might say they're illegal, or they're those types of even things that are not necessarily for our. They're not a matter of illegal, but they're not for our best interest. We come to understand, and what is our best interest is those things that will take us in the direction of freedom, those things that will take us in the direction of God attunement. And what is it that God wants for us? And this is what we need to focus our life and come to understand in life. Now, the path that Paramahansa Yogananda shared, he came into the world as a great master to share with people. Yogananda, his guru Swami Shri Yukteswar, his guru Lahiri Mahashai, going back to Babaji. They came to bring into this world at this time this science of Kriya Yoga. And what is that? Lahiri Mahashai said that everything you need in life can be accomplished and attained through the practice of Kriya Yoga. He says, through the practice of Kriya Yoga, the techniques of Kriya Yoga, of course, are ones of learning to magnetize and energize the life force within each one of us. Magnetize. Become a magnet through the energy in the spine, and you will attract to yourself that which you truly need. You won't have to go out and you might say, outwardly seek it outside yourself. It will be attracted, it will come to you naturally. If you develop that magnetism within yourself, this, you could say, is the highest of the techniques of yoga to be able to accomplish what we truly need. Now, I am going to run short of time, but I would like to, because I saw he's going to give me another 5 minutes, and but I'm just going to real quickly. He's going to share some of these, but I do want to just mention a few things. What are we affirming in life? Are we affirming, I am poor? Are we affirming, I am needy? Each of us, like those people with personality differences, each of us right now are affirming something in our minds. We say, well, I don't think so, but yes, we are, because we are who we are by that which we have affirmed. And, one, I'm a man, I'm a woman. I'm of this age, or I'm of this age. I'm of this many kilos or that many kilos. I've affirmed many things. I'm a intellectual, or I'm a bhakti yogi. We have many different self-identities, and to the degree that we affirm those, we should ask ourselves, is this what I want to be? And if you want to be something else, or to acquire something more, go back to those things right now that we're affirming, and change them. We can change them, just like we spoke of last week about karma. Any karma that has been put into motion can be changed if we put out the right spiritual effort now. We can counteract anything that's been put into motion. So I'd like to share just a list of a few things, and then Shurjo later is going to go into more deeply. A flow of energy will bring results to you of the type of flow that you put out. You do not need to think so much. This is one of the principles of leadership. Many leaders think that it's their job to think about every detail in the office. It's not. The leader's job is to be concerned with the quality of the energy and the energy flow that's taking place in that office. Then, if the quality is right, the details will take care of themselves, and that's the other people's job, really. But it's the leader who's responsible for the quality. And we, as leaders of our domain, you might say our spiritual office, the quality of our energy flow. Don't worry about the details. Get the quality right. Loving demands. Form a relationship with the divine. Yogananda used to say, we go into the palace, all of us go into the palace of the great Lord of the realm. and we look at this garden and that garden, and we look at all the wonders. He said, wouldn't it be better to not look at all the details of the garden and all the wonders of the palace grounds? He says, meet the king, or meet the owner of the palace. Be introduced to him first and let him show you around. Then you'll have everything. And so it is with our spiritual life. Make loving demands to meet the supreme owner of the palace. And feel yourself to be surrounded by light. I see Sergio creeping down those steps. And so surround yourself. Remember, it's that energy that you're putting in through the energy flow that's creating a magnetic field around you. Be conscious of that magnetic field. What sort of field are you putting out? Fill it with light. Make it strong. Project it toward in harmony with good things. When you're in harmony with good, that aura of light is strengthened. When you're in harmony with things that are not good, it's weakened. You may win a few things, but slowly, slowly, in this life and lifetimes to come, that aura is weakened, and you ultimately, according to that aura, you draw the karma that's associated with it. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll give it over to Sergio.
We'll open it up for questions for the next 10 minutes.
That's a few questions. Ah, yes. One or two questions? One question. If you don't, I'm going to keep going. I think what he's saying is I have more time. Oh, okay, okay.
Sometimes the situation is very tricky. I mean, you think that you are in a positive frame of mind and there's no negative aspect to your intention. But nevertheless, what you require or you desire doesn't always come through when you need it. It may come through at some distant time, I mean, because you never know the future. But it doesn't happen then. What do you think is wrong with the way one is intending?
There's a number of answers, I think, to that. Obviously, when we put out a call, a soul call, for something that we need in life, and it need not be material, but we need something in life that we feel. Seriously, we feel that this is a righteous request. There's a number, and it doesn't happen immediately. A couple of answers there could be for that. One is that we have to realize that things do take time. things do take. We have to allow God's plan to work at its own timing and its own rhythm. The other thing is remember that it's not going to happen. Most good things in life don't happen without serious, repeated application of energy. We have to be able to, as Yogananda said, we have to be willing to shake the world and until those results come to us. And that can be, like Yogananda, that night in the autobiography, he talks about inviting his young friend. They said that they wanted to have a vision of Krishna. And they meditated, but his friend kept wanting to give up. And he said, no, I will not give up. I will sit here and not move. This is like the Buddha said when he sat under that tree. I will not get up until his prayer had been answered, in his case for enlightenment. And so we have to have that sort of a determination to be able to get the results that we want. Secondly is we also have to be absolutely sure that what we're asking for is the right thing we're asking for. And thirdly, are we sure? Oftentimes, if your request goes out, you make a request, don't be too detailed in the request. Think more in terms of the flow. If it's abundance or prosperity or love or what it be, because the expression of what we want in return may be beyond our rational ability to know specifically what it should be. Let it be open that, God, if it be thy will. Always make sure to include that in your prayer. God, I need this, I want this, you must help me, if it be thy will. And allow that to be there as well. But we have to realize that we have taken how many incarnations to build ourselves and to develop the position that we're in right now. And it's going to take a amount of time for us to be able to reorient that. And this is a lifetime's work. And we have to be willing to dedicate our to that amount of time to be able to change that attitude of whatever it is that we have now to something that's going to be more to our liking. So there's no easy answer. That's how you prefaced your question, and I agree with you.
There's one more question.
Can we just see if someone else has it in that case? Anyone else?
Yeah, then we come back. And I saw the fellow in the back first, then we'll come back here. What, this fellow in the back first. Yes, sir? Yes, sir.
This lifetime, you said one lifetime is enough, or you need many lifetimes?
You put it this way. I think you have to be willing to put many lifetimes. And then if there's that willingness, if you're saying, God, I'll give it one lifetime, well, and then I'm going to give up. Well, already you've defeated yourself. So you have to have that conviction that whatever it takes, whatever it takes, I'm going to do it, and then results come. But if you condition it to that like that, I'll give you this much, but that's all. You've halfway failed already.
Today's what the value systems are today, if you try and be upright, hold the right values in a sort of a corrupt, workaday, shortcut world, so you find you are fighting a very lonely battle. And so whatever magnetism, whatever karma,
What should I say?
so what happens, sometimes feel you resign or bow out of the situation, or you try and be the change which you're trying to bring in.
Yes, sir.
So this is linked to probably the karma of the times as well as the magnetism, where to know to move out of the situation or try and be the change within that situation. Looking at what's happening, there are distinguished, eminent people who probably RTI activists today, people who are trying to bring the change. We're noticing in scams all over the world, their voices are being silenced. They are sending out that magnetism, but sadly, those people are not getting the results.
I think it takes a great deal of courage. It takes courage to be willing in your own self to stand up for what you believe in. And each person has to make that decision within themselves. And we look left and right at what others are doing, but we know in the end it comes up to our own integrity within each one of ourselves of at what point is the tipping point for us, and to what degree we must compromise with the realities of the world that we're faced in. I don't ever judge another making that decision because I'm not standing in that person's shoes. But I do know within myself I have my own standards, and I have to. I don't think I can say these are the standards that all society must adhere to because I don't know the situation for every person. Each of us face our own trials on that. But we have to, I think, for our own salvation, live to the highest that we're able and capable of. But not to judge if we don't always reach the highest, and every time I think as Swami would say, says that don't say that you failed, just you haven't yet succeeded. You keep coming back. The more important aspect in even success or failure is it's a direction. We want as a society, I think we want as a person, individual, we want to be, in which direction are we facing? In which direction are we moving? And I think this is I become discouraged at times, but I have to say, I think as a whole, the encouragement comes when I say, yes, I see a young generation who wants to see things change and move for the better in the specifics of the societies that we live in. And I think I would just encourage that generation, young and old, because let's not identify ourselves one or the other. We're all young in that way. Don't give up hope. We have to keep trying, no matter how many times we stumble. We have to keep, because we know it's the right thing to do. Summoning up the courage and the ability to do it ourselves. We start there, and then as we do that, we inspire other people to rise to the degree that they can. But don't judge either. So we inspire other people and do your best in your life.